Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Football Diary podcast. FA Cup 5th round. It's been and gone, and maybe, just maybe the magic of the cup has been rekindled. It looks like there might be, unless Man City spoil the party, a fairly new FA Cup winner amongst our ranks for the first time in a while. So it is exciting, and amongst those is Aston Villa, of course, Myles' boys. I'm with Myles today. How are you finding the cup, mate? Are you enjoying it?
I'm really excited by it all of a sudden. It's funny, it felt like this week Emery was kind of talking it down as a cup, and now I'm putting out our path to the final. So yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about Villa in a bit.
Absolutely. Well, Villa, it's been, 1957 since they won the FA Cup?
Yeah.
It's been a while, and your FA Cup record's been horrendous, hasn't it? So it's good to see a cup run actually happen. It's not been like that in my lifetime, that's for sure. So we'll definitely talk about Villa, but I feel like we have to start with a couple of crackers, really. Brighton against Newcastle being one, but Bournemouth against Wolves. And the amount of ill discipline that's been in all of these games, or most of them, throughout this 5th round. And Bournemouth Wolves was a crazy one. Obviously, Bournemouth winning on penalties in the end. A crazy moment from Matheus Cunha. Two crazy moments. One spectacularly good, one spectacularly bad. An intervention of semi-automated offside, which is a definite talking point in a couple of games this season. But let's talk about Matheus Cunha first. I can't really talk about the goal without talking about his loss of discipline, first of all. And that tussle he got involved with. And the way Kirkes got under his skin for Bournemouth really rattled him. And he looked rattled throughout a lot of the game, and even before the red, didn't he? And felt like it was kind of coming in some ways.
Yeah, it definitely did. Even the way he took his goal seemed like it was he just hit that ball with anger as well. And
yeah,
like,
he did.
The way he just kind of stood there after he'd scored was like, yeah, I'm not having any of this today. It's such an odd situation. Kirkes is a brilliant fullback, and obviously they came up against each other so many times in the game. Kirkes definitely had a great game. I think the other thing is, because he's so advanced the way he plays, Kirkes, it made Cunha track him quite a lot, and he's up and down the pitch. It was a really good battle. And then, yeah, just complete head loss. I think the thing is, when the FA Cup quarter-final is on the line, it's a massive thing for both of these clubs. And Wolves' season has been so stop-start and disjointed, and let's be honest, it's not been great at all. They would have been desperate for some success here. They would have thought they could get a result. And it was like, you've made it to the end of the game, you aren't quite having it your way, and this was just petulance.
A little bit.
And that will really frustrate Wolves fans, because the other thing is now, at least a 3-game ban, it might end up being longer. I think they're fine in terms of like the relegation battle now, but it's a huge loss, and you never know.
Well, you're banking on Ipswich producing something there to make that seem a little bit tetchy, but it doesn't do Wolves any favours, does it? And in this game, obviously, this could have been their season momentum builder, really, couldn't it? This FA Cup run's been good so far, and they were kind of dominated in this game to a degree even before the red, but they were still in it, I think, and that's the problem. They went to penalties, and to see that the penalties decided, they could have done so much more with Cunha on the pitch. So it's frustrating, but that goal from Cunha shows how good he can be, and I don't know if he'll be there beyond the end of the season. He's not long signed a new contract with them, has he? So his value is going to be pretty high. But he could have performed on the Champions League stage with that goal, couldn't he? And that's the frustrating thing with him in games like this. When that lack of discipline, which has happened before, creeps in, it kind of underlines and undermines anything good that he's done.
Yeah, it will, but it's one of those things where, do you just take that as a Wolves fan? Like, if he's capable of so many moments and he gets you through games, if you just kind of have to accept that it might be one of the things that makes him the player he is in a lot of ways. It's a bit like Suarez with like his level of aggression. Now, there's definitely like other parts of Suarez that I definitely wouldn't accept for his game.
Loose
but
comparison.
You know what I mean, right? Like the way he conducts himself on the pitch and that kind of temperament. Often, it's like he plays through that in spite of that to kind of get the success. And Cunha does feel like that sometimes. It feels like his temperament. It really does. He's just emotionally caught up in the game, and I don't know if I'm mad at that as a Wolves fan. This was stupid. Of course it was. But at least it's in the 120th minute of a game. It didn't have an impact on the outcome of the game, really. Okay, maybe he takes a penalty for Wolves, but other than that, we're talking minimal sort of impact on this game. It's the aftermath that will frustrate him. And I think he goes in the summer still. I think there's talk that there's a buyout of about 65 million in the new contract. Someone will pay that, I
Yeah,
think, because
definitely.
he is quality. You're right, like he belongs in a top four club really, and if
Yeah.
not that, then there's somewhere close by or at least competing for it.
Well, on the flip side of that exit is Bournemouth's progression into the quarterfinals, and I'm pretty sure they've only made it to the quarterfinal stage a couple of times in their history, or it's a rare occasion for them. And what a season they're having anyway without this cup run. But with Evan Nielsen obviously starting for the first time in a while and getting on the score sheet within half an hour, winning on penalties, I think their defence acquitted themselves brilliantly. Howson and Hill, Kirkes, as we mentioned, and was it Hill who played the through ball for one of the goals, for the goal, sorry. I mean, it's a great team unit, and this result and this cup run, I think, could go further because they've got Man City in the next round, and I reckon that's probably the worst team City could have faced.
Yeah, I think neither team will be happy with that draw, and I think every other tie, there's a couple of teams that will go, "Yeah, I'll take this."
Yeah.
If they were relentless in this game, and actually, we kind of saw the best and worst of Sam Johnstone in a lot of moments. There was
True.
always an expectation he was going to kind of reach a really good level. I mean, I saw him at Villa for a long time. You will have seen him at United. He kept Bournemouth out of that game for a really long time. He made some incredible saves because Bournemouth were knocking on the door. I mean, I think they had 31 attempts on goal in this game.
Yeah.
That's
Dominant.
crazy. But what's good is they've been in such good form lately with massive, massive injuries. And for Evan Nielsen to be back, that's such a boost for them as they're not just pushing for the FA Cup to get deeper in that, they're pushing for a European place. Both of those things are huge for Bournemouth and their progression as a club.
Massive.
Like that's such a platform for them. So yeah, this is a really important win. They'll have been frustrated that they couldn't get it done in the 90 minutes. They'll be frustrated that they've kind of had the extra minutes in their legs because they played a lot of first team players as well. But getting through, yeah, that's huge for them. And I would fancy them against Man City. I'll be honest, as a fan of another team in the competition, I'm really glad those two have got each other because at least one of them's gone. Because they both can upset anyone on their day, really. You never know what kind of Man City are going to turn up, but Bournemouth are capable of knocking anyone out, really, and that's a really good thing for them to be looking at now.
Well, they could have won it in the 90, couldn't they? And we'll talk about the disallowed goal, semi-automated offside and what that means as well. It was difficult to pull off semi-automated offsides when there's a crowded penalty area. And I think that's been kind of said as the reason why they couldn't use it and they had to go to drawing the lines in this occasion. What are your thoughts on what you saw in this game and its execution? I mean, for me, if you just let it play, there's no reason to say it's not a goal. I think it's one of those things where it's not a clear and obvious error. So therefore, why would you go to technology for it? But how are you feeling?
When VAR was first introduced, I have to say, yeah, I was really behind it because, look, it's the modern world. If technology can improve something and make things more efficient, I'm all for it. This isn't efficiency, though. What was it? I think it was 8 minutes, this stoppage.
Yeah. The crowds were getting
just
so
crazy.
Touchy. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it kills the atmosphere. Like, kills the momentum of the game, kills the atmosphere. Crazy. And if it is that marginal, well, that tells you how much of an advantage it was. Like, it's hard to quantify, isn't it? Because there's obviously some sort of advantage because they score, so it must have worked in their favour. But equally, if you are having to check it for that long, it tells you that's not why the offside law was introduced. I feel like we've had this conversation so many times, and anyone that talks about football has had this conversation of, do we want our whole game to be taken over by this sort of setup? I mean, the standard of officiating in this country is terrible, so anything that adds to them getting something right, I should be all in for, but not at the expense of the entire experience of the game. Like eight minutes is a joke.
When you're watching the game live, though,
ridiculous.
I mean, watching the highlights, obviously they don't convey how long that feels. But if you're in the stadium waiting for an explanation, and I know at one point the referee went over to the coaches and said, "Look, this is what's going on. This is the decision that we're trying to come to. But these are the complications." At that point, just let it slide, honestly. I would rather we had what we had was it the last round of the Cup, where there was no VAR, and there were a few contentious decisions, but you were just left talking about them for a day or two, and then you just move on. That's the way I prefer it. For the seamlessness of old football, if you like, yeah, that's a much better experience for the fan. But this was shocking.
Yeah, ridiculous. I mean, that VAR check was basically as long as we've been having a conversation about this entire game for. I wouldn't.
Wow.
That quantifies it for you.
That is, yeah, that's an eye opener. We'll finish the conversation about this game with just a comment on Dango's penalty. I mean, he's high on confidence, isn't he, Dango Ouattara at the minute? But he took a penalty without even taking a run up, and it really caught the keeper completely off guard. I've got to admire that level of confidence for penalties. That it's not just a Penenka. You know, he's actually gone, no, do you know what? I'm going to try this, and it worked. And it looked so cheeky.
I'm still not convinced it was the most confident penalty of the weekend, though. We'll talk about that a bit later on, I reckon, when we get to your boys.
Very true.
Yeah, it was a week of it.
Yeah. Well, before we get to that point, we'll talk about Newcastle Brighton, because that was a really entertaining game that had a lot of flashpoints, a lot of action, a couple of red cards in there for good measure as well. And yeah, an entertaining game that two teams really want to progress in a competition of. And obviously Newcastle have got the Carabao Cup to look forward to. But for Brighton, this win was massive, wasn't it?
Yeah, they're another one that are building something massive and trying to get a platform and some recognition. And it does feel like sometimes there are some clubs that maybe have got a bit of a ceiling when it comes to their league performance, and you're not expecting them to go and get into the top four or challenge for the league title. And this is what the FA Cup should be for. This is what domestic cups are there for. Not to give the traditional top six another trophy in their cabinet, but actually to let someone else have their moment. And Brighton feel like they took that moment with both hands in this game. They really went for it. Yes, obviously the red card makes a difference, and the really fine margin of Newcastle's offside might make it this a completely different story. But even through the game, Brighton really went at Newcastle, and moments of quality defined it. And that feels like Brighton's season, really. They're capable of such brilliant football, and they're capable of creating these chances and scoring these goals out of nowhere as well. And I feel like they're a really entertaining side to watch. This was another really good tie. And actually, I'm really glad they drew each other, because again, two sides that have potential to go deep in this cup.
I agree.
Maybe Newcastle had one eye on the Carabao Cup and probably had a bit less interest in this. But actually, I think any team that was still left in it would have looked around, seen all the people that had gone out of the competition and thought, right, we've got to go for this now. Yeah. And yeah, Newcastle will be disappointed, but Brighton, this is a huge chance for them.
It's huge, and they're having a good season. It feels like copy and paste of the Bournemouth conversation in some ways. They're having quite similar seasons, aren't they? And they've had their ups and downs, but they find themselves in a good position in the league, in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, and with a team and a squad that looks capable of doing well next season as well if they can consolidate. Now, granted, they've spent a lot of money. I think you forget that Brighton have actually invested a lot of the money they've earned from transfers in the last summer transfer window, and it's paying off. They don't just buy players on the fly. They do their research, and you can tell. And I still get surprised by the players that they keep producing, because they all prove to be so good. And even a signing like Yankuba Mensah, who scored against his old club with this muted celebration, which was bizarre considering he played. And did he play any minutes for Newcastle?
I don't think so.
But he's coming good. He's playing well. And Danny Welbeck lashing in the winner in extra time kind of symbolises how, I don't know, likeable they are as a club. He's kind of the figurehead of that. Is there any player that's even more likeable than Danny Welbeck in the Premier League right now?
Well, they've got James Milner as well, who I think's always had a pretty good reputation, hasn't he? Yeah, Brighton are a likeable team.
Former Leeds, Liverpool and Man City, James Milner.
You're probably talking to the wrong person for that, but yeah, hey, I think about his Villa days. Yeah, definitely. Brighton are kind of showing everyone why neutrals took such a shine to them in the first place. I think before this season, they've always been a side that we've kind of always had one eye on. And yeah, you appreciate the fact that they are able to redo their squad basically every year because someone gets pulled away from them. And then this year it felt like they were doing that, not because they'd lost players, but because they had the money to invest. They had a new young manager that they wanted to invest in, and they went out and backed Hertzler. And if this is the fruit of that they go on a really good cup run, that's amazing for them. They aren't quite as swashbuckling as they were last season at times, but again, they're developing a really good reputation as a side who wants to play football. And they're still finding their identity under a new manager with a lot of new players in the squad. And that's why you've had these inconsistencies with them this season. I think at one point they'd won, drawn and lost the same amount of games in the league. But there is definitely a platform for them. And yeah, someone like Minter is evidence of that. Newcastle kind of had to cash in on him to meet FFP regulations. Brighton saw a gap in the market. They went out and got him. And yeah, he looks brilliant. That looks like such a good acquisition for them. He took his goal incredibly well. He's having a great season. And we can say that about a lot of Brighton players, actually. They're having a great season.
Yeah, absolutely. Newcastle, on the other hand, will obviously, like you say, have an eye on the Carabao Cup final, and their final league position could still be very good as well. So let's not forget that. So their exit from the FA Cup isn't a disaster. It isn't season defining. But again, with the teams that have gone out of the competition, they would have fancied their chances. And it must be slightly disappointing to lose in the manner they did, really, in some ways. A loss of discipline from Anthony Gordon, I think it's fair to say. A definite red. It's unnecessarily aggressive. And he misses the League Cup final now. So it's stupid for him, really, in some ways.
Yeah, this isn't just about the FA Cup exit, really, is it, for Newcastle in terms of it being costly? I think Isak goes off with a suspected injury. That's definitely worrying. Gordon's now going to have a 3-game ban and miss the cup final, and they're already underdogs in that game. And Gordon's given Liverpool some problems in the past as well, if you remember. So really, they would have wanted that sort of asset, and their squad is not that deep. So to be missing any key player can have a real impact on Newcastle. We saw that last season, didn't we? Yeah. When the squad was stretched for the Champions League, they struggled in the league. And now, I don't know what the sort of aftermath of Isak's substitution was in the end. I don't know if there's been anything said about what sort of injury it was. But that and Gordon, that can cost them in the league, because it's a really tight league campaign as well, isn't it? We talk about this every week.
Absolutely, yeah.
The gap in the league is so small at the moment that a few bad results and you fall out of the picture slightly, and you do not want to be missing your 2 key attacking outlets, really. So from Gordon's perspective, you've missed your chance at a cup final against his boyhood club as well. Like that's gutting for him. It is. So it's so silly. The whistle had already gone. The game had stopped. Van Hecker had obviously wound him up a little bit, as he has a tendency to do. But stupid thing to do. Absolutely stupid.
Yeah. Well, it's not the only flashpoint this weekend, was it, of a lack of discipline and a loss of head. Tariq Lamptey's second yellow as well. Why lunge like that when you're on a yellow? So yeah, that was another flashpoint. Obviously, Fabian Schär gets a disallowed goal for offside as well, which I think is fair. So name in the hat, Aston Villa. Into the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. Uncharted territory, it feels like, for many seasons for Villa fans. So yeah, to see them progress in a really comfortable, dominant win against Cardiff City was really pleasing to see. It was a rare occasion, I think, for you lately, Myles, where you could actually watch this feeling relatively comfortable, because so many games are on a knife edge in the Premier League with how competitive it is. Like, it really feels like there's jeopardy in every game. But quite early on, this felt like quite comfortable, didn't it? And Marco Asensio, once again, with a brace, linking up with Marcus Rashford yet again. The stars aligned, and it was a really good win, wasn't it?
Yeah, these January acquisitions are proving to be exactly what Villa needed at the right time, it feels like. Because this game, it felt like it hung on, can we be clinical at any moment? Because we battered them. We were all over Cardiff, which is to be expected. I'm not trying to big that up into something that it wasn't. You're against a team in the division below you. You're at home. We've got an excellent home record this season. We've only lost twice at Villa Park. So you would expect us to go out and win this. And when the game was getting tougher, and when Cardiff started to ask us a couple of questions, you really needed someone to step up and take a moment on. And Asensio is able to do that. Like, we've brought someone in who is undoubtedly above the quality that we would have expected of a player at Villa in the last few years. I think it's so telling of what Emery's trying to build, that we're getting players of this quality to come to the club at this stage. It's fantastic. He's an excellent footballer. Throughout the game, he was just capable of producing these moments where you see why he was so successful at a club like Real Madrid, why PSG wanted to bring him in. Yeah, I really hope that even though we haven't got an obvious clause to keep him in the summer, I hope he does enough and works with Emery enough to think that he wants to stay, because I think it could be a really good acquisition for us. I don't think it's like, Coutinho had a couple of bright spots, let's bring him in permanently in the summer. I think this is actually a player that elevates the squad level, and him alongside Rashford, they seem to have such a good connection already. I mean, we talked about it on the last podcast, because they'd done it against Chelsea as well, and here we are again, and that's really encouraging.
It's that combination, isn't it? That killer combination of players that are looking to get out and have more minutes or get away from a different environment. In the case of Marcus Rashford, I've got a point to prove. I've got a manager that is renowned for getting the best out of players in that very position. And it's no surprise really to see both Marco and Marcus. I've seen so many commentators call him Marcos Asensio, and it's like, no, it's Marco.
Yeah, very annoying.
He's annoying. Yeah, I think they're just trying to conflate the two names there. But to see the pair of them hit the ground running in tandem and in sync, and for another connection with an assist from Rashford for Asensio, is not only kind of testament to him finding that kind of player that's got a point to prove, not just one but two, but also two players with very complementary kind of attributes that work in that attacking phase. And Rashford drifting out left and looking for a man, he didn't have that at Manchester United at all. There's very few targets, but Asensio feels like an obvious target because he gets himself in those spaces. He's such an intelligent, elegant footballer, isn't he?
Yeah, he feels like he starts the play and wants to desperately finish it.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really encouraging for a player like him, that he's got the work ethic to drop deep, orchestrate things, but also get himself into goal-scoring positions. I mean, you look at his second goal, the ball comes across the box. Watkins leaves it for him to put it away. Your number 9 has the confidence to go, right, this guy's got the finish. And I think that's a really good sign. I think Villa, we need to distribute the goals amongst the squad a bit more, because at the moment, Asensio's already, I think, our 4th top goal scorer this season.
Wow, okay.
So it was Watkins and Duran getting most, and obviously Rodgers is having an excellent goal scoring season. But 4 goals now in what? A really short space of time, and that's exactly what Villa needed. I mean, Onana was getting a few goals and then he's been injured for ages. Barkley was getting a few goals, he was injured. So for Asensio to fill that gap is brilliant. I also just want to have a quick mention for Andreas Garcia, another January edition that's probably played a lot more than we maybe anticipated. I mean, we signed him from a 2nd division Spanish side in Levante, and now he's kind of leading the charge on our right hand side. Obviously, Matty Cash's injuries play a big part in that, but he looks excellent. He looks really well settled. He had that error against Liverpool, and that could have let his head drop, but actually he looks like he really wants to compete. He always wants to get a good ball into the box. He's capable of doing that with both feet. He'll run at players. That's really, really encouraging. I really like that as a sign-in, because it's identifying the right player. It's looking at his profile. Is this someone that might come in and prove a bit of a point here? Brilliant. Really good acquisition.
Okay, let's look ahead a little bit. Let's dare to dream. Last 8 of the FA Cup, last 16 of the Champions League, well in contention for European Champions League place again in the Premier League. Are you daring to dream? And also, what does an acceptable season look like, and what does a dream season look like for you?
It's so hard to measure, because even going into this game, Emery's comments were so weird. Like, he said before the game that we were just not contenders for this competition. We couldn't possibly compete to win it. And now I look at the draw and I think, well, we're probably favourites now, or at least second favourites, because Man City are always going to be kind of in the conversation. It's opened up beautifully for us, not to patronise Preston, but you've got a mid-table championship side and a quarter-final. You absolutely have to take that opportunity to go and get a place at Wembley, and then it's anyone's game. And you know what a good cup manager Emery is. So now the FA Cup feels like a really viable thing for Aston Villa. And what a thing to define this kind of new start to Villa's journey under Emery, right? We've had a couple of years of excellent football, really exciting, good results. We're competing at the top end of the league, but a trophy would be huge for Villa. So, a dream is we go and lift the FA Cup now. If we're realistic, the Champions League draw is great for us. We've got Club Brugge, and I think that's a really interesting tie because we played them already in the group stage. We'll have learned a lot of lessons for that. We're favourites for that. The next round, obviously, we're expected Liverpool or PSG, and that can be really difficult. That could be the end of that run, and I think you could still be proud of that. A quarter-final in your first Champions League season in 40 years is amazing, really. If you get that, an FA Cup win, I'll take that. I'll take that in 8th in the league, because the league's so congested right now. I wonder how much capacity our squad has with the amount of injuries we've had recently to compete on 3 fronts. But if you'd said to a Villa fan at the start of the season, would you take the FA Cup as a win, a quarter-final in the Champions League, and 8? It doesn't really matter where you finish in the league at that point, because you've got Europa League qualification anyway.
Agreed.
That's incredible. And we're capable of that. We really are.
Yeah, I think in the context of how difficult this season could have been with Champions League football thrown in, the intensity that produces on the squad, and obviously that's shown with the amount of injuries you've had. This is looking like a progressive season. This is looking like a season where you can deal with that and still compete. And that's mega. That is huge testament to a coach that can rotate and players that can step up in the absence of the key players that might be out injured. Your defence somehow has managed to hold fairly firm. I mean, there's been occasions where you've shipped more goals than necessary, really. But you're still in these positions. And maybe that's partly down to how competitive the Premier League can be and how everybody's taking points off everybody. But this feels like progress still, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely does, because you are juggling a new challenge. And Newcastle showed how hard that could be last season. We saw it with Leicester when they were in the Champions League. They really struggled. I mean, a bit different, but still. I think when you are establishing yourself as a side that wants to compete at that top level, just getting some sort of consistent European football is massive. Like, I wasn't expecting us to qualify for the Champions League this year in a lot of ways. I think I would have hoped for it because I think our squad is good enough for it, but you also could understand why it would be more challenging for us. So if you then follow it up with even a Europa League place, you've got another competition that you might actually compete for, and you're getting that European experience built up. And I mean, you know what Emery can do in the Europa League. So I would take that, definitely. Yeah. I don't want to sound almost like a poor mentality of like, oh, I'll take whatever we get. But equally, you have to acknowledge where we're at in our development. And the fact that we've built up an FA Cup run, I mean, we've not had one of those since Tim Sherwood, which that's shocking. I mean, yeah, I've watched Villa go out the third round consistently for years now. So a quarter-final against a championship side, meaning we are a game away from a place at Wembley, that is massive for us. So yeah, it's definitely been a progressive season. We've improved the squad. We definitely have, particularly with the January additions, and if we make some of them permanent, that'll be excellent. We've shown what we're capable of on the biggest stage, beating some of the biggest sides in Europe, beating Bayern Munich, stop Juventus. Like, that's a great achievement. And now here we are going for a domestic cup. And yeah, we looked at the draw already. Brighton are going to have either Forest or Ipswich. That's one of them gone. Fulham Palace, one of them gone. City Bournemouth, one of them gone. All right, I'll take that. There's no one in this tournament left that I fear, except maybe Palace because they keep battering us.
Well, uncharted territory for Aston Villa, it feels like, on many fronts. Uncharted territory also for both Manchester United, for various reasons, and for Fulham, who beat them in their fifth round encounter at Old Trafford. Now, I can't really talk about Fulham without getting United out of the way first, so let's do that. I think Bruno Fernandes is obviously showing just how bad United might be if he wasn't a part of this team. Once again, felt like the player that kept them involved in this tie. It was a really poor quality game from both sides, I reckon. But Fernandes still proving, despite his doubters, which I find amazing, that he's our only world-class player in some ways, isn't he?
Yeah, I really want to know where he's going to end up, because I feel like he won't have the patience for this United project. He can't, because he's so much better than them, and he's probably at a stage in his career where it's now or never, and he's not got the kind of trophy cabinet a player of his quality should have, really. Like, he'll want some winners' medals. Okay, he's got the FA Cup and the League Cup with United, but really, this is someone that should be competing for league titles, Champions Leagues. He's an excellent footballer, and if it wasn't for his moments kind of literally dragging Man United through games at times, I can't understand it. I mean, for 70 minutes, Fulham were incredibly comfortable, it felt like. Second half, United were better, but not inspiring. And then even when Fernandes scores, the quality around the goal was not amazing until his finish. It's beautiful. Like, he does so well to make something of that.
Yeah, it's a good goal.
And yeah, it definitely is. And I think everyone expected him to do well under Amorim. He kind of fits that system of being a number 10 that has the capacity to drift out wide or support the striker and a bit of freedom. Obviously, they're going to have a bit of a connection from being able to communicate really effectively, although Amorim's English is so good, he probably has that with the whole squad.
Yeah.
He's definitely the player that kind of gives United fans some hope when he's on the pitch, but it's just not enough, is it? He can't do it on his own, and I'd be so fed up if I was him. And he looks fed up half the time, doesn't he? But he's been like that even when United were quite good.
But I feel like United are definitely in a moment like City were early in the season, but we've been like it since the start of the season. But since Amorim has arrived, it feels like the confidence has just sapped from them the longer they've gone without adjusting to his system. And I felt like there were some positive passages of play, which is a rare thing for us. It feels like sometimes we get it, but we just can't finish it. Alejandro Garnacho frustrates the hell out of me in the minute because his confidence is so low, and he had a few really good chances to put it away. Rasmus Højlund is got nothing left than confidence at the minute, and when he went off and Obi came on, he was real shining light for us too. So there are some positives there, and I'm clutching a no, but I feel like I have to look for them really when we are struggling so much. And yeah, I mean, United now, it's all or nothing for the Europa League, isn't it?
Honestly, like, the fact that you've managed to find anything positive there, I'm proud of you, mate. I'm proud of the lack of a defeatist attitude, because from the outside looking in, finding a positive is hard. The positive to me is there's not that long left of the season. Then you might get a break from it all. Yeah, the Europa League's massive, obviously, but I think I said this to you last week. I'm baffled by the idea that any Man United fan thinks that United can do anything in that competition. If your season hangs on that, well, you may as well call it a day now. Like, there's no way they're good enough to compete with some of the sides that are left in that. I'll be amazed if they get through Sociedad as a tie. I'll be honest.
I know.
I can't see that. And I speak to a lot of Man United fans somehow. I mean, I live in London, so maybe that's why. I keep saying to them all, it feels like we're getting to a point where Amorim is damaging his reputation to the point where I can see him leaving. And we had that conversation last time. And I think the fact that now there's the exit of the FA Cup, the thing that kind of gave United some hope last season, and again, we'll say about every side that's exited this week, if you'd stayed in it, you had a good chance, really. Anyone did.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. If I were you, I'd go and be watching your local team for the rest of the season. I'm not sure about this one.
Nah, I feel like I've been lucky enough to have spent most of my lifetime enjoying the success of United. I feel like this is something that all fans go through at some point, but this is new territory for me, so I've got to stick through thick and thin. So I will clutch at the positives. If Dave was on the pod today, it would be a very different story. Let me just say that. But yeah, as it is, let's just give Fulham their flowers, because again, like every other team that's progressed in this competition in this round, Fulham are one of those that could easily win it. Like, I mean, it's very evenly balanced. Manchester City are an unknown quantity on what City will show up in the rest of this competition. So again, the pathway's open for Fulham. And what a great team they've got. What a worthy team have been in the FA Cup quarterfinals as well, even though this display wasn't the best.
Yeah, and they've managed to get themselves a home tie in the quarterfinal. Yeah. Although, to be fair, their away form is better than their home form, so not sure how much impact that will have. But yeah, like you say, when you've made it to this stage, they've got a great coach. I think Silva's doing an amazing job at Fulham. They've got some really talented players in that squad, and a few options as well. So they'll definitely be looking at the FA Cup as something that can be season defining for them. It's just, I'm really interested because they are in that kind of bracket of teams, and I include Villa in that. I include Brighton in that.
Yeah.
Forest to a degree, although they're a bit above it. Palace might even sneak into it, where you want, and Bournemouth, of course.
Brentford maybe too.
Well,
generally in the league.
I think for the FA Cup, do you really go for the FA Cup now, or is it? Oh, I think I could do something better in the league, and like, can sides manage both? Because it is going to be a case of there's only 2 places we reckon up for grabs in the Champions League, right?
Yeah.
You feel like the top 2 are definitely decided, and if we're honest, Man City are gonna claim one of them. They are.
Yeah,
so then
they will.
Forest are favourites for it at the moment. Newcastle will be sniffing around it, and then all of those other teams are trying to get there and are continuing in the FA Cup as well. So it's like, where do Fulham kind of put their eggs right now? Can they manage both? Because they are so good on their day, and I wouldn't put it past Fulham to shoot right up the table if they had a clean run at it.
It's mad, isn't it?
It's been a great year for him. However you look at it, Marcus Silva's done an amazing job.
Yeah.
And the squad is in a much better place. I mean, Calvin Bassey, he's improved massively this season. Took his goal incredibly well, and that's not really what you expect from him. But it shows that Fulham have got threats in loads of different areas. So yeah,
I agree.
A really good performance.
Well, looking at the benches, and you suddenly see how good a squad Fulham have got. You know, you've got Emil Smith-Rowe, Ryan Sessegnon, Raul Jimenez. You know, there's so many players. Yeah. Willian has come back. So it feels like, their squad is deep, and I think Willian is one of those players that gets maligned quite a lot, but he's a useful squad player, and he's a cult hero at Craven Cottage. So yeah, onwards and upwards for Fulham, and fair play to them. And begrudgingly wish them luck in the next round. We'll move on to the best of the rest, shall we? Let's talk about Crystal Palace, because their 3-1 win over Milwall was massively overshadowed by a horror tackle and a horror injury for Jean-Philippe Mateta. I don't know how long he'll be out for yet, but he's had over 20 stitches in his ear. It was a shocking challenge, and I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but it kind of overshadowed a really important win for Palace as well, didn't it? They're through to the quarterfinals for the first time in a while, and this will be the talking point, sadly.
It might genuinely be the worst challenge I've ever seen. And yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it was intentional. I do think there is an air of this game was so big for Millwall and the tension was already so high that, an erratic decision like that probably comes a bit from the atmosphere that's being created and getting a bit carried away, being overzealous with it. And it was a terrible follow through. I can't get my head around how he ever thought that was going to work out well. I mean, even if he hadn't made contact, he would have had to have gone, because it was so reckless. Yeah. It was ridiculous. And I have to say, the fact that the red wasn't given on the pitch, the ref didn't even blow up for it as a foul.
That's shocking, because he was so close to it as well.
What on earth is that about?
It was in his line of sight, and I think even if you didn't see the boot connect with the ear, which was a gruesome injury in the first place, just having his knees and that in proximity to a player's head is just really dangerous. I'm stunned by it, and I wish Mateta well, because he's been in such good form. I'm sure his family were horrified watching it in the stands, but it's I think. Well, you saw Simon Jordan, was it? No, it wasn't Simon Jordan. Sorry,
it was Simon Jordan.
Yeah, saying how it was the worst tackle he's seen.
Steve Parish.
Sorry, Steve Parish. Yeah, I'm associating the two, aren't I? And it, like I say, it overshadowed the conversation for him. You know, he must be so chuffed about the result, and yet Mateta is the first worry, isn't it? And rightly so.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about officiating recently, but what level of protection are players getting if Michael Oliver can't see that? That's the thing that baffled me about it. Like, yes, obviously you have to put so much blame at Roberts for making such a horrific challenge, but what's Michael Oliver there to do if he doesn't see that?
I know.
Like, it was so poor. To need VAR for that kind of decision tells you what that structure is doing, that there's this over-reliance on it to re-referee games, and maybe referees are... It's early in the game, Oliver probably thinks, I'm not so sure what's happened here, I'm just going to wait. But that's poor from a very experienced ref. One of the most experienced we've got in England.
And the thing is, it was probably appointed knowing there might be a chance for a red card in this game.
Of course.
And you would have put money on there being a red card, but not in this way. That's the thing.
No.
And again, I'm sure it's not intentional, but it's created an issue for Palace now where they're without Mateta for a little while. But they've got Eddie Nketiah there, who his goal was really good.
He took it well.
He took it well, and I think he's got the habit of really scoring goals that aren't that important in the grand scheme of the game, but he's scoring still. He'll be really important for the next foreseeable, won't he, for Palace?
Yeah, it'll have to be, absolutely. And Palace are really blessed by the fact that they've got an option like that to come off the bench. It was... I was trying to avoid talking about this game, but we'll have to mention it briefly. It was so obvious to me that when he came off the bench and the commentator said... And Nketiah has not got a Premier League goal yet this season. I thought, well, here you go. Here's Aston Villa. You'll get one here. And then he did. Yeah. That's an excellent thing for him, obviously, to get off the mark there. And then to follow it up with this goal. He probably will get a run in the team while Mateta recovers. I don't know how long it will take for something like that. And yeah, that's what Palace need. They need him firing. They brought in a poacher. They brought in a number 9 that is capable of scoring goals, and they've got such good creative players around him that actually he could be really well suited to this Palace side, and it will fill a gap if necessary. And they're another team, and we're going to say about everyone left in the draw, that we fancying their chances here. No.
Yeah, definitely. Well, next game I want to talk about is Preston-Burnley. Preston 3, Burnley 0. Much changed Burnley side. Obviously, one eye on promotion for them, and obviously really tight defence as well, so to concede 3 seems odd to see, but the nature of the Preston victory feels a bit distasteful as well. Obviously Osmajic takes the headlines for only a couple of weeks ago allegedly racially abusing Hannibal. Obviously he scores in this game and goes and celebrates in front of the fans in a way that for me was totally unnecessary. Keep it low key and don't make it the headline. But no, that's not what he did. And yeah, not a great feeling after that game, was it?
Yeah, and I'll tell our brothers in claret and blue that Villa will do everything they can to avenge that in the next round. No, it's not even worth joking about, because it's deeper than football, isn't it? It's one of those things, and I think sometimes when these issues happen on a football pitch, we've got a really quick turnaround on them, and we kind of write them off as like part of the game, or like, yeah, it's competitive nature for him to be doing that at the Burnley fans, and they were giving him stick. But essentially, a man has gone to work and been racially abused by essentially
allegedly,
a colleague.
we have to say.
Yeah, allegedly. And the fact that even with that conversation going on, to be that tone deaf, to continue in that manner, there's no allegedly about that. That was stupid. And I think Scott Parker, he says that he wanted to protect Hannibal and keep him out of the game, which I understand. But it is frustrating.
What a shame for him.
Yeah, it is. Of course it is a shame, because Burnley, all right, they're flying in the league and that will be their priority this season. But if they'd gone with a strong 11, they would have not pressed them out, you'd imagine. And then all of a sudden you are in a quarter-final, you never know what can happen there. And it would have been a massive occasion for Hannibal in his career to be able to help push them on in that stage. And instead, you have the alleged, I want to say, abuser in the conversation on the pitch, causing chaos in this way, and is now able to carry on with his journey in it. I'm really surprised that, given the fact that these two teams were about to face each other again, that nothing's been done sooner.
Yeah.
Like, if this allegation has been made, and it was so public, I mean, you saw Hannibal's reaction on the pitch when it supposedly happened.
Yeah.
You have to think something has to be done quickly here. And again, why are we always delayed in the conversation when it comes to these things? Why are we not efficient in managing them?
Yeah,
like, of course you want a full investigation. Of course you want things to be thorough. But equally, you're telling me you haven't got a team of people that could work this out in a couple of days. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it had
Why are we still here?
It had shades of Suarez Everett, didn't it? And obviously the players refusing to shake his hand before the game, and I guess in the context of supporting your teammates, the right thing to do as well. So yeah, a distasteful way of dealing with it. Even if it's an allegation, even if he didn't do anything that was alleged against him, to stoke the flames like he did, that's the thing I think people have got an issue with. But Preston,
absolutely.
We're all wishing them luck in the next round, aren't we, Preston? No. Let's move on to the final game. Man City beat Plymouth 3-1. Obviously, Plymouth took a couple of big scalps on their road to the fifth round, but Man City proved the bridge too far. Nico O'Reilly grabbing a couple. Kevin De Bruyne getting one for good measure, for nostalgic reasons. It's weird to see him scoring, isn't it? But he seemed happy with it. City are a threat still, aren't they? Whoever they put out, and these youngsters are kind of proof of what kind of talent is coming through. They will be probably up there as maybe the favourites, do you think, just for the Cup?
It's hard to say because of the way that the draw's gone. I think if they'd had a home tie, then yeah, they would definitely be favourites. But Bournemouth away is definitely one of the more tricky fixtures they could have drawn.
That's the thing, yeah.
Bournemouth have done well against them recently as well. So, yeah, it's interesting. But, yeah, it comes down to the fact that City aren't going to have a lot to compete for anymore this season. Like, they're out the Champions League. They're not going to win the league. Obviously, aren't going to win the League Cup. They're not in that either. So this is their chance at getting a trophy. And if Man City's off-season is them qualifying for the Champions League and winning the FA Cup, they can take that for a year, I think, can't they, in the middle of a bit of a rebuild. And yeah, you mentioned they're bringing in some younger players that are able to shake things up. I think if you're talking about this as a rebuild journey and Guardiola is trying to bed some new players in, Nico O'Reilly at left back will feel really glad. He's got himself a double. He was a good attacking threat. He was defensively calm. He was good on the ball. He looked really encouraging. So yeah, annoyingly, Man City continue on. I'm still waiting for the outcome of these charges. I thought that was getting settled in January, but hey, here we are.
I was trying not to bring that up. I'm trying to be the bigger person, not throw these allegations back in the picture. But yeah, you're right. We're into March now. It's mad, isn't it?
The other thing I was going to mention as well, actually, about this game, player with the most touches on the pitch.
Who was it?
Jack Grealish.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Heavily involved. And it was interesting to see that because this was a pretty good opportunity for him. A game where he can try and build some momentum, and he looked dangerous for a lot of it. But again, I really wonder what happens to him at the end of the season. Like,
True.
he's not coming back to us, particularly if we sign Rashford. That's not happening. And I just don't see Man City as a long-term home for him anymore. He seems happy there. He's constantly commenting about how much he loves playing at the Etihad and things like that. But yeah, I mean, if you're down to just some appearances where you shine in against lower league teams in the FA Cup, that's not going to be what he wants for his career, particularly with the New England manager around. So yeah, one to watch there.
Big 6 months ahead for him, really, isn't it? But
yeah,
a big week ahead in Europe, mate. Season defining for Manchester United, possibly for Aston Villa as well. So yeah, a really, really busy week of European football. How are you feeling ahead of that?
Yeah, I'm so excited, I'll be honest. The Champions League has just given me such joy already this year, and the feeling of these games. Like, I watched the Villa Palace game midweek and watched the FA Cup game, and you love it. It's amazing. But nothing compares to the way that you set up the Champions League games, hearing the anthem, seeing the badge on your sleeve. It's been such an amazing journey for Villa. So I really hope there's a bit of redemption for us against Club Brugge after the group stage game and that ridiculous moment that kind of defined the whole match.
Yeah, I forgot about that. It's a huge
opportunity.
That's crazy.
Oh, I definitely didn't. I think I'm still having nightmares about it, and I really hope we don't see anything similar this time. But no, it's going to be huge. I'm really excited for it. And obviously we've still got to see who gets through tonight with the Forest Ipswich game. We're recording on Monday, aren't we? So
yeah.
The FA Cup's not quite done yet either.
That is true, but an exciting fifth round. Too much football. Well, this week there's so much, isn't there? And then next weekend, looking ahead to that, you've got Brentford, I think, on Saturday, late kickoff as well. So huge game, massive game.
But they just keep coming round, the fixtures for Villa. I feel like we are always playing, much to my wife's dismay, I think.
Well, the early kickoff on Saturday is the one I'm looking forward to. It's Forest against Man City at the City Ground. I think that'll be probably weekend defining, I think, for our next podcast, which definitely join us on next week. Hopefully we'll have Dave back. But yeah, in the meantime, please do support us everywhere you can. We're on TikTok, we're on Blue Sky. We're obviously here on YouTube and on all audio channels pretty much. So like, follow, subscribe wherever you can. It'd be great to hear from any fans that have got any opinions on any of our videos. Just join in the conversation. But until next weekend's monster pod, mate, have a good one.
Yeah, thanks, mate. See you then.
See you later.